Hi guys, this is Lalana. Thanks for tuning into the Sovereign Path. Happy New Year to all of those you guys who celebrate, even though it was at the solstice, but it's all good. Happy New Year. So let's talk about something that keeps coming up over and over again in the comments and in my coaching. I've hit on this a lot. I hit on the same themes, really. I'm sure you guys notice in most of my videos, and potentially they come through in one way or another way, just to kind of, make things more understandable on some level, so that we can all have a greater awareness that we are the light of consciousness here, that we are consciousness experiencing itself in form through this avatar, through your avatar and your avatar and your avatar, through the avatars of our sweet puppy dogs and our kitties and our trees and our plants, and everything around us is consciousness expressing itself. Right? Consciousness is expressing itself in trillions and trillions of different ways all at once. You guys hear me say this all the time. And we have to have the remembrance that the awakening process, right? The activation that you are going through, that you have been activated to go through this awakening process, is to bring you into the remembrance that you are that you are consciousness having an experience in form. And that as you, as consciousness, who is the creator of all things, right? I am God, source, creation, all that is consciousness, the light of being. The remembrance that since you are that, then that means you are the one who is creating what you see in your physical reality. All the time, we've always been doing this, right? I talk about this a lot in a lot of my videos. We have always been doing this. We just used to be doing it through separation, right? Through an unconscious state. We weren't conscious to the fact that we were actually creating things based on our belief system, based on our subconscious programming, based on our inner world. We didn't know that. The awakening is reminding you of that, right? You're coming back into the remembrance of the truth of what you are, what you have always been. You're coming out of separation consciousness, which had us forgetting that we were conscious awareness here, having this experience, and coming into oneness again, coming into unity consciousness, and the remembrance that I am all that is. I am God's source creation. And so, when it comes to the masculine, but also when it comes to really anything in our world, you guys have heard me say so many times, if we are always seeing that something needs to be fixed, that something needs to be broken, that something's out of alignment, right? That the masculine is never going to wake up, that maybe I will never see the masculine again, that maybe I doubted this entire path, maybe I'm not even awakening, maybe I'm blah, 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 right? All of that sort of stuff. Although it is normal and natural as you're going through the dark night of the soul, as you're going through this process, to continue to release all of this stuff, right? Release the program, release the definition, release the label, release the belief systems. And so it's normal that in those moments we're wondering what's going on when we're on awakening path. We're wondering, like, is this really happening? And we're going through the ups and downs and the waves and the oscillations, and all of that is normal. But if we're always focusing, and that's not what I'm talking about, what I'm saying is that if we're always focusing on the potentiality of things going wrong, or the masculine potentially never waking up, or this never working out, if that's always going to be your focus, then by as within, so without, as above, so below, by default, you here as consciousness creating your reality, that is inevitably what you will see. So the thing is that when I talk about inner union all the time on this channel, and we talk about inner union a lot, what we're talking about is coming back into the remembrance that I am that. We're talking about coming back into the remembrance that you are God's source creation, all that is, that you are the light of being, that you are consciousness having an experience, right? This is what we mean. You're coming back home to the truth of what you are. You're coming back home to love. The twin who activated you to go through this process was the reflection of you, right? They reflected God's source creation back to you through their eyes, through their voice, through their vibration. That was the energy that you felt. That was the energy that felt like home, that felt like belonging. It was consciousness. It was the truth of all that is. It was the true vibration of love that you recognized in them. And when you recognize that in them, which was you, right, which was all that is what triggers the awakening process to begin. And once you see that, once you have the awareness of that, and you see that reflected back to you in your twin's eyes, well, you can't unsee it, right? You can't not see it. You can't forget that this happened. You can't sort of like go back to sleep. This is why people they want to run from this path. They want to run from the twin. They want to hide from it. They want to just be like, I just don't want to deal with this anymore. Because somewhere the ego aspect, right, that's been running this whole thing is feeling like I am being annihilated on some level. You know, everything that I thought was me, everything that I thought was true, and it's not. It's different, right? I'm seeing God's source creation being reflected back to me. And so on some level, whether you recognize that consciously, whether you recognize that unconsciously, you did recognize it. You felt it. And so it catapulted you onto the awakening path, right? And so as we're moving through this and we're releasing the subconscious programs, we're releasing the patternings and all the stuff that you guys hear me talk about all the time, it's bringing you back into anchoring that, yes, I am that. I am the light of being. I am consciousness. And as consciousness, having an experience here, awakening out of the illusion and the dream of separation, I now have the wherewithal and the understanding that as within, so without. I have been creating this entire time based on my beliefs, my so-called woundings and brokenness, my subconscious patternings, things that I have been still gripped onto that happened in the past, things of this nature. This is why we continue to run the same patterns, because our programming and our belief systems remain the same. And they will continue to remain the same if we're in separation consciousness. So for those who are not going through an awakening, that is part of what they're here to experience. But if you are going through the awakening process, then as a million of you guys have heard me say, not that many, if you were still meant to experience separation, then you wouldn't be awakening, right? You wouldn't be going through this process if you were meant to continue to run those same patterns and beliefs and continue to create the same reality that you've been creating up until the point that you were activated to go through this awakening path. So just knowing that, right? Just having that awareness of knowing that I am coming back to the truth of love that is within me, that has always been within me. I am coming back into the remembrance that I am not becoming anything. I have always been that. I have just been wearing a lot of masks and veils and shields that have been blocking me from the true conscious creation that I am. All fine and good. Separation consciousness. Now you're shifting out. And so now that you have this awareness, it's also really important that we really concrete in that this entire reality is based on as within, so without, and the embodiment of as above, so below, right? This is what I talk about when I'm saying anchoring inner union. The anchor is the embodiment, right? The anchor is I am coming back home to self. I am coming back home to the remembrance that I am, right, the light of all that is. I am consciousness having an experience through this avatar. And I am creating my reality based on my beliefs, my subconscious programming, blah, 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 all the stuff, right? That's what we're doing. We're coming back into the remembrance. And so coming back into the remembrance means I am seeing whatever I am holding within me. And if that's love, which is what inner union is bringing you back to, peace, love, abundance, right? All of the wonderful things that I'm always talking about. then by default, that's what you're going to see in your physical reality. And so, I talk to a lot of people in my coaching who feel like they're sort of like, this is being done to them, right? The awakening is being done to them. They don't want this. They didn't ask for this. It's like, this is being put upon me, sort of thing. And so when we feel this, which is a common occurrence on this path, it's the ego that feels that. It's the ego that feels that it no longer knows its place in your world. And so, of course, ego, only knowing how separation runs, is now being overridden by union and oneness within. It's very natural for us to feel like, I don't want to be on this path. I didn't choose this path. I being ego, right? The I is saying, I don't like this. Why do you not like this? Because it doesn't feel familiar. It doesn't feel comfortable, right? It feels like the ego is out of control. It feels like the definitions and the labels and the programs and the patterns that we've always been running are no longer running the show. They're starting to lose their grip. And so, of course, those aspects that we have been defining ourselves as are going to rise up and be like, I don't like this. I don't even know what's going on, right? Your ego is trying to regain control of what it thinks it has control of, but what it has never had control of, right? The ego is the mechanism that runs separation consciousness that we have experienced, right? That's it. That's what it is. We're not killing the ego. I say that all the time. We're not killing the ego. It's just that the ego needs to know its place, and the place is not in the front seat of the car driving you around. It has been there, now it's not. You're going through the awakening, now it's not. And so, of course, it's gonna fuss and get annoyed and whatever else. The ego needs to be in the back seat, the third row in the back seat, strapped in with a seatbelt. You can let the ego know if you need its help, right? But that's what's fighting you, right? That's what is coming up and telling you that all of these are happening to you. And if this and that and the other and the 1,000 questions that the ego asks, it's because it feels like it's losing its grip. It feels like it's losing control, and it is. It is. It's not wrong about that. But that gives us this sense of, if I'm not that, then what am I? And so that's why I try to bring this through and through so many of my videos, and that's why I try to speak of it in different angles, so potentially one of these angles hits home more than another of the angles might hit home. So you start to really feel within you the truth of what you are again. As I've said a million times, this is experiential. You will feel it, right? You will feel it energetically. You will feel it in your heart space when you start to come back into the truth and the remembrance of what you are. It's those glimpses of inner union. It's those glimpses of those highs of abundance. It's those glimpses of feeling like, how did I ever forget consciousness? How did I ever forget source? How did I ever forget that this was flowing through me this entire time? You will literally feel it, and it's wordless, it's speechless. That's why I say all the time, it's very difficult to put that feeling into words, right? But you'll know it when you know it. So keep bringing yourself back to the remembrance that you are creating things based on what you are holding in your inner world. And so again, if that's coming from this place of feeling like everything is out of order, everything is chaotic, everything is, crap, everything is hard, everything is all of these things, then by default, that is what you will see. That's just the way it is. You have much more agency than you think that you do, right? Than you think that you do. We've been running all of these programs and all of these societal norms and all of these conditionings, and we have thought that that's what we are. And so we haven't really questioned all that often of why does this keep happening to me? And if we did question, why does this keep happening to me? Why do I have the same relationship over and over and over again? It doesn't matter if the faces change, it's still the same theme. We wonder why that's been going on, potentially, some of us, for however long, most of our life. Or we wonder why we've had abundance issues most of our life. Or we wonder whatever, that same theme, whatever, it's different for everybody, right? We'll wonder that. Maybe we'll try to pull ourselves out of that. Maybe we'll try to do different things. But if that's our dominant energy, if that's our dominant belief system, if it's who we think we are, then that's just what we see. The awakening is showing you that is not what you are. It's a role you have played, and that's it. And now that you're awakening, you can step out of that role, right? Actively. You can actively step out of that role. Is the awakening an organic process that is pulling you towards that? Absolutely it is. Can you dig your heels in the ground and fight? Yes, you can. And people do that all the time. Can you slow this down? Yes, you can. Can you make it more difficult? Absolutely. Yes, you can, right? You have that choice, right? You have the choice to see certain things through certain lenses and certain perceptions based on what your inner world is saying. And so really start paying attention to that. I've mentioned this in countless videos in lots and lots of different ways. And like I say, it shows up all over the place. And so specifically, if we're talking about the masculine, then we're still saying, like, on some level, I need the masculine to show up for me in these certain ways. And if they don't show up for me in these certain ways, then I can just, like, you know, kind of push them on their way or tell them X, Y, Z and blah, 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 blah. It's coming from within you. And that's an annoying thing about this path, you know, to the ego and the program and the beliefs and all of that sort of stuff. But everything is showing up exactly how you think it's going to show up, right? And we think like, well, I don't want that consciously. Yeah, but subconsciously, you've been running that for so long that it's doing it anyway, by default, right? That is the purpose of the awakening, is to release you from these programs, to awaken you to the remembrance that you are love by default, that you are abundance. It is your birthright, right? It's not something you have to work for. It's not something you have to fight for. It's not something you have to earn. Same with love. It's not something you have to earn. It's not something you have to be worthy of. It's not something that you have to, like, let me do this thing and let me look over my shoulder and see if the masculine is following, right? It's just having the awareness that if I need to continue to look over my shoulder to see if the masculine is following the work that I'm doing, then I'm creating that over and over and over again. If I believe that the masculine is not going to awaken, they won't, right? If you believe that you're still damaged and that you still have all of these things running, then that is what you will continually, perpetually see. These programs and these belief systems and these labels and these definitions and all of these were experiences that you have had as consciousness, right? As a spark of consciousness. But they are not what you are. They are a role that you've played. And you do have the agency and the autonomy to continue to play that role. You do, right? Based on that. Based on if I want to continue to see everything through the same lens as I've always seen it, then I'll continue to experience the same reality that I've always experienced. Granted, you're going through awakening if you're on a true twin flame path, and so you're going to get drugged through it, and it's just going to make it a little bit harder. You'll eventually get there, right? To inner union, I mean. And beyond that, it doesn't end at inner union. It just gets a hell of a lot more comfortable, right? But it's important in all of these in-between aspects and awarenesses, especially when we're oscillating and we're going up and down and through the waves, you know, and spiraling and all of that, that we have the wherewithal. And this is why I'm always talking about, this is why I teach mind mastery. This is why I teach allowing your emotions, feeling what's coming up, having the awareness of what's going on in your energy, all of these sort of things, so that you can be the master again, right? Right? And knowing that you are that, rather than you being the master unconsciously when you've been in separation conscious in the sleeping state, not going through an awakening, right? You were the master then too, you just didn't know it. Now you know it, right? Now you're coming back into the remembrance of knowing it. So, you know, the same thing that we hear, I'm sure, all the time, as within, so without. What do you want to see, right? What do you want to see? What do you choose to experience, right? The reason that you're releasing all of these things isn't to make it harder. It isn't to make, you ask a million questions and to feel like you don't have any autonomy here, or to ask a million questions and to feel like you're being dragged along on a path that you never asked for, right? Again, it's ego that's doing all of those things, and that is a natural part of this process. But at some point, it's also having the awareness that I am consciousness, having an experience, and the consciousness that I am is awakening out of separation, because the consciousness that you are, for whatever reason, doesn't feel the need to continue to experience separation, right? We can go through a million different rabbit holes of why that is. The bottom line here, though, is that that is what you are. It's what we all are. And so we have the choice to see things through the lens of love and through an open heart space, or through the lens of fear, right? And a closed down heart space. You guys hear me say all the time, so much of this path is opening your heart again, right? It's feeling that connection to source again. It's coming into the remembrance that I am that. I am love. Not romantic love, platonic love, familial love, all of the different kinds of labels that we have on love, but the actual frequency of love itself, the existence of love itself, the existence of creation itself is what I am experiencing all of this, right? So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. I'm happy to continue to do more videos like this if you guys would like me to. So that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope that everybody had a wonderful couple weeks. If you celebrate, if you didn't celebrate, I still hope you had a wonderful couple of weeks. And I'll see you guys soon. Have an awesome day.